Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you leading-edge astrology conversations through a journey of soul growth patterns connecting astrology's energetic cycles. Get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
There, I'm unmuted. Yes, we're getting close to 2022. This is Sue Rose Minahan, host of Talk Cosmos, leading edge conversations, awakening your authentic self for soul growth. And that tunes in exactly to this December 26th edition of Talk Cosmos with Daniel Fiverson, Evolutionary Astrologer, because our conversation is, what is evolutionary astrology? It's certainly about soul growth, and it involves Pluto and the nodes, which is all coming up to be of major importance next year, and a very spiritually induced, you might say, or karmatic, however you want to express it, year, because Jupiter in a few days is going to be ingressing, as we say in astrology, the sign of Pisces, the last sign in the zodiac, one of all spiritual empowerment of the forces greater than ourselves, a mystical, most amazing force. But back to evolutionary astrology. Daniel Fiverson, I'm saying this right, take five as I say, an astrological intuitive, he's an author and teacher, and he's a student of astrology, Ching, tarot, and Kabbalah since the 1960s, when, as we know in astrology, Uranus and Pluto made their great conjunction, which we're still impacting, of course, because the planets have their cycles and in all the aspects. And that's why we look at astrology, isn't it? So mythology and astronomy informed Daniel's work, and his core astrological training was with Jeffrey Wolf Green, who began this great evolutionary astrology in 1977 after a dream. And you can find out about that too. It's not a cookbook as astrology, but it's a context of life experience correlating. There's a lot more to Daniel. He was a CompuServe sysop, and I'm probably not saying that right, news to me, but it's a very intricate.
Sysop, it's shortened for systems operator, sysop.
Very good, very good. And it's like the library of the online universe that we're living in these days. It's very complex, and always you can find his biography on Talk Cosmos, and do subscribe. We're a YouTube and a podcast. But in a nutshell, Daniel has very many books, numerous books he's published. In fact, he has one that will be published about what is evolutionary astrology coming up. And he has articles. And he also has a YouTube Astrological Weather Report, which you can certainly find out about for all his really astute information that he shares in this astrological world of ours. And I'm really honored to have him interested in joining us with Talk Cosmos. So thank you, Daniel, for meeting with us. And I might say too, your website is that's a number 4, Evolutionary Astrology, for those that want to find out more about you. So
thank you, Sue. Those are very kind words. I will try and live up to every one of them.
Yes, life is a process, isn't it? And that's evolutionary, isn't it? We have these phases. So I guess there's so many things to talk about, but in a sense, I think Pluto is a lot to do with our soul, if that's where you want to start on this conversation.
It's a very good place to start. I'm going to back up one little bit, though. Just so we kind of understand, it would take this from the long perspective. It's about the journey of the soul itself from lifetime to lifetime, where we are an externalization of our soul. Okay, and Pluto in the chart, as you have referred to, and I see I'm getting a lot of reflection in my glasses. I apologize for that. But Pluto correlates directly to the soul. It holds all of the information of what came before our previous lifetimes, plus the curriculum of lessons that we have been working on. And we work on our lessons actually over as many as eight separate lifetimes, but it's a work in progress. Each of us is a work in progress. We come in, with what we've already accomplished, what we have learned, and we go forward from there. We pick up where we left off. We never go backwards. But Pluto directly is the soul, and the soul externalizes itself as all the different lifetimes that we experience. We are literally an externalized extension of our soul, and our soul being, if you would, is an extension. I don't know if that's the correct word, of all that is. God, the source of all this, however you want to frame that. So it is hierarchical to a degree, but we're all connected. It's a singularity because it's all about how the consciousness itself is distributed and how it comes down into time and space as us, as each of our lifetimes. We only see it from this perspective. Okay, our glasses, yeah. we have blinders on, in a sense. That's our condition as human beings. But the path of evolutionary astrology actually describes our progress along that line of learning who we really are and what the cosmos really is composed of. It's composed of energy, and we're just a little bit of that energy.
It's so true. I love this idea that it recycles, which we know, and a spiral. As you say, we don't go backwards. I keep remembering all the very premise of life, seeing in different shells and everything, everywhere we know it's a spiral. Very, yeah. It's a
yes,
good connection.
Exactly. And it's an endless spiral. It has no beginning and it has no end.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's an interesting thing, just as an aside. It's kind of an enigma, but the largest things that we can see with the greatest telescopes, with Hubble and the new James Webb space telescope that's about to be launched, look very similar to the smallest things that we can see through an electron microscope, and we stand exactly at the center of those two universes.
I love it. And that's exactly astrology too. It's earth centered, and it's also this blueprint, macro and micro. Thank you, Daniel. So soul growth, yes, Pluto, and the desires, I suppose, however else you're
it is desire. Our soul is a desire-based entity, but the core desire of our soul, just like the core desire for us, is security. We want to be safe. It correlates to our moon and Cancer in the 4th house, but that's really what we're all about. And our nodes as well, correlate to this need to find security. But that again is a very wide spectrum. For one person, security is going to be a lot of folding money. For another, that security is going to be to find a spiritual teacher. And every possibility in between, every combination thereof. Again, those are the poles, which are, really not diluted, if you would, but there's every variation of that in between, and that's one of the things I'd like to talk about today is that evolutionary path itself and how we move through it. But evolutionary astrology, if we can just use a couple of sentences to describe it, it describes that journey of the lifetime. It describes the multidimensional design of the planets, the stars, the asteroids at our moment of birth that reflect an individual's path from past to future through the present. And we stand in the present, but it is a continuum. And it's a continuum that is not only fluid, but it is conscious. It's not set in stone. but I'm probably getting very much ahead of my story.
No, well, no, I love the idea too, to bring the fact out that it's a spectrum, just like light when it shines, depending on what angle you see certain colors, or people get the pictures of the sun, sometimes it just shine in so many directions, but the spectrum of possibilities and potentialities, you're exactly right, in this evolutionary basis, by bringing out the fact that, what one person seeks for security, getting back to that concept that is part of all of life, but yet on what terms, whether it's just for security, material, whether it's our self, developing our soul, or whether it's really connecting up to the spirit of the alignment, but then the whole juggle business it's awesome. Really. Possibility.
But we feel we're like water. Consciousness actually correlates to the water signs in the water houses, and we are like water. Consciousness, everything in the universe is conscious. Minerals are conscious. Plants are conscious. The plants know that they're here to support us. Okay, and animals are conscious as well, and so are we. The difference is the containers, the structure, and that correlates to Saturn. The structure of the entity determines the quality or the nature of the consciousness that it holds. You see, but it's everything is conscious. There is nothing that is inert, so to speak.
I thank you, and you expressed that really well, because I agree wholeheartedly, and it's how to share that concept. So consciousness is a really perfect way, and Pluto is that conscious unconsciousness that we're wrestling with, to unearth, to bring up.
Yes. Yeah, Pluto is the core. Pluto really holds all the information, and everything else in the chart comes after Pluto. That from an EA perspective, that's the entry point in the chart. It's not the ascendant, it's not the sun, it's not the moon, and there's not. Astrology works, Sue. So all astrology works. I don't want to give anybody the idea that this is the only way it works, because there's lots of interpretations and perspectives. But the EA view is that Pluto itself is the linchpin of the entire chart. And everything, our inner planets, our Mercury, or Venus, or Mars, the outer planets, the way that affect the inner planets and interact with them, all is derived from Pluto's intentions, from the soul's intentions that are embedded in Pluto itself. Intention.
That is a ladder in itself, isn't it? Yes.
Right. It is all about intention. There's an analogy of that really correlates to understanding an overview of it is the idea of the wave and an ocean. And the wave separates out of the ocean, it rises up, and when it gets up above the ocean, it feels separate. It thinks it's just the wave. It forgets that it's the ocean. Well, that's how we come into time and space initially. We are just a wave that has been spun off from the ocean of our soul, so to speak. And so our reality, our consciousness is based in that separateness. Okay. And we go through many lifetimes working with that. The soul has a dual desire nature. And the first desire of the soul is to experience itself, to experience every gender, every religion, every geography, the entire range of human experience is necessary. We don't get to skip any steps. We don't get to cut any corners. We have to be like water and fill up every space that we pass through. Water comes to a depression in the ground. It has to fill up that depression till it can move on. We're the same way, and we must continue. And in order to do that, we have to exhaust all of those separating desires, whether it's money or love or sex or power or whatever it is that we think we need to feel secure. we have to experience it. We have to fill ourselves and be saturated with that desire, with the satisfaction or lack of satisfaction of that desire, before we can move on. And ultimately, we begin to turn a corner where we begin to recognize that there's something more, that there is some other desire that is present in our consciousness, and that consciousness and that desire is the desire to return, to recognize that we are part of the ocean, and to then begin and turn that corner and want to remerge with all that is. But it happens over many, many lifetimes. And again, it's hard because we can't put our human parameters on it. And you say, how many lifetimes does it take? Or, there is no such thing as time. Somebody, I think it was Albert Einstein who said it. He said, time was invented so everything wouldn't happen all at once. Okay.
Hopefully only one body at a time, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe not. Maybe time is not linear at all, Sue. How is it that we can be regressed hypnotically or have some kind of experience that we get bleed throughs? Here in Santa Fe, there's some guys who hang around down on the plaza, and they're wearing these outfits from 100 years ago. And I came to realize that this is some kind of bleed through. They're still psychically connected to that lifetime, and they're still acting it out. Okay. Actually,
this resonates with my own thinking since I learned that because with this idea of lifetimes, we reincarnate, and our spirit, we have this physicality of DNA, and we have this spiritual DNA. But what lifetime is important to us could be a whole spectrum of life. It could be back in cave days that we're working it out, or it could be the golden era of Plato, or it could be Samaria, or it could be in China when they had some Ming dynasty, or maybe down in South America in the Amazons. Yeah, I agree. So here we are, this collaborating force with people trying to connect what was important to themselves. And of course, in an astrological reading, we may not quite confront all this. This is like us talking right now, which just is part of my big philosophy or awareness of, but it is really amazing to consider that sometimes the life we're living now is so abstract from what really was important to us. Maybe we rode around in horses at that time. Yeah. So there you are, as you're showing.
Right. So out of this comes the Jeff Green came up with this paradigm that there are actually evolutionary states. And it's quite controversial, especially with some of the Hellenist or, very traditional astrologers. And often, even lay people, when you begin to talk about this stuff, they think that it's judgmental. If you tell somebody that they're in a consensus reality, or that they're individuating, or that they're spiritualizing, it's not about a judgment, because we have all played every note on that keyboard. Okay. And it is a keyboard, but there are three basic evolutionary states. And, when we come up out of the animal kingdom, the primary desire in the animal kingdom is the security is in the herd. Okay. The zebra that gets separated from the rest of the herd is the one that the lion's going to take home for dinner. So instinctually, when we first come into human experience, we're herd mentality. And again, that's a kind of a rough, raw kind of classification, but it's true. People in consensus reality, their security is to be like everybody else, to dress the same, to talk the same, because they feel that they're part of the world around them somehow. But as we move through that consensus state, what really drives us forward is that we want what everybody else has. We want his car. We want his house. We want their wardrobe. We want that vacation. So those are the desires that we begin to burn and move through in consensus. But we get to the top of that consensus state, And we've got the helicopter on the roof. We have the $1 billion yacht that's you can sail to Sardinia. We have a huge corporation with 1,000 people work. We have everything that we think we could ever accumulate, and we don't feel any more secure than we did when we started out. As a matter of fact, we're probably less secure because we've got so much more to lose. The guy who works on the assembly line in Detroit, it feels much safer when he goes home and cracks open his can of beer and turns on the tube than maybe Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, because he has nothing to lose. See? So when we get to that top of that state, we begin to question. We begin to say there must be something else. At the top of this consensus state are the people who not only have learned to play the game along the way, but they're making the rules. Okay. So it becomes this culmination that really ends up being meaningless, because they have it all and there's no meaning in it. All they have is the illusion of whatever it is they were attaining. Yeah. So we begin to transition, and the states that I'm going to describe, I'm going to come back to that keyboard image, because we're playing a keyboard. It's never one note. We're not ever playing a single note. We could be moving past consensus, but maybe there's still something back there that we're holding on to, and we're not done with it until we're done with it. We have to saturate ourselves with every one of those separating desires until we're done, till we can move on and not feel the pull. Oh, I missed that, or I'm going to go and revert back to it. But ultimately, we do. And so the person who's experienced consensus in its fullness, maybe they'll go and they'll have an astrology reading or a tarot reading, or they'll go for learn meditation, or go to take a metaphysical class. They'll begin to move, but they'll still dress the same. They won't show. There'll be some kind of compensation because they're not fully ready to say, okay, this is really who I am. They're experiencing it. It's what Carl Jung called the individuated stage. 70% of the people on the planet, according to Jeff, are in a consensus state. And I think that that's pretty apt, because it really explains why the world is the way that it is, and especially why we're experiencing what it is that we're experiencing right now.
Well, if I might say, there is an idea of mainstream, right? I mean, ever since the 70s, along with that conjunction between Uranus and Pluto, there were so many ideas, whether it was raw food or whether it was holistic medicine and on and the environment and et cetera. And it takes a long time to get mainstream, you might say. That's a thought. And the other thought that I wanted to lend is that along with security, it is this sense of safety, because to correlate, because there are times with the conditioning, just those code words, because the conditioning, if we're learning, we implement, we repeat the language. It's known that we repeat the caregiver's language. That's how we understand the call and response in language. And it could be the mother, it could be the father, whoever it is. But after a while, we improvise into our own way of being. So that, it's like a blueprint, just as you said, like macro and micro and macro.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yes, this business of safety that has purpose, when you think of all the cog wheels into that building of it's complex. You're right. And I just wanted to add
what you're describing. Saturn is conditioning, the 10th house in Capricorn. That literally correlates to consensus reality. And again, there is meaning to it, because there's certain things we have to agree to live together. We stop at a red light. We don't hurt people. We don't kill people. There's certain consensus things that we do agree to. But most of consensus reality is man-made law. Men marry women. It's along those lines. It really boils down to one person's personal agenda that somehow got legitimized. Right. But at any rate, we begin to move that through the individuated state. And at each of these states, I'm not going to digress too much because we don't have the time, but each of these states that I'm describing actually has 3 substates within it. And at the top of the individuated state are the artists, the musicians, the poets, the writers, the visionaries, who through their own creativity and individuality are able to create the body of work to show that there is something else. There's something more than just being on a treadmill, going to work 9 to 5, retiring, buying an RV and driving in the slow lane. There's got to be more to life than that, and we move through it. At the top of that stage are the geniuses who we have all admired, and many of them are role models in a lot of ways. It's 20% of the population. Okay. Mm-hmm. As we move through that individuated state, we begin to recognize that there's two kinds of law. There's the man-made law that I talked about, and there's also natural law. There are laws, universal laws that are true at any time and place. It could be Mesopotamia, or it could be, a colony on Mars, 200 years from now. They are valid, universal truths. The 10 Commandments, the Hermetic principles, the Upanishads. We know their names. When we begin to learn about them and live according to them and actually embody them in how we live, that leads us into the spiritualized state. And the spiritualized state is not religious. The religions are all back in consensus. They're patriarchal, they're good and evil, hell and damnation. The spiritualized state is where we learn to live according to natural law. And we recognize, again, that we're part of something much greater than ourselves. It's only 5% of the population. And at the top of that spiritualized state are literally the handful of saints and masters who have walked on the planet. Consciousness increases geometrically, not arithmetically. So their consciousness of this handful of people was so great that they literally have upheld the entire planet in its history. Okay, so that's the progression. But like I say, we could be. It's a keyboard, and we're playing notes along it. And there are evolutionary traps in each of them along the way. It's not a smooth ride. There are hard lessons. I recommend Jamie Sam's work to learn about evolutionary traps of where spiritual glamour and false prophets but it's all part of the plan. It's all part of the lesson to realize that it's not about me. It doesn't matter how much metaphysical knowledge I have. It's not about me. It's about what we can point to as a direction to go, to learn and to become more conscious. Okay, why is this important? The reason. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just to remind you, I'm not sure. I think we have a little break coming up in a moment. So go ahead and lead that, because it's really true. This adds to our consciousness of free will and fate. We have the choice, and it is within us how we want to align and our experiences and everything. So if I'm ready to hear your caption liner, and then we'll take a break and come right back. Thanks, Daniel. Unless you want to start off the break with that. What's it all about?
Let's jump into that after the break.
Okay. Well, this is December 26th, and I have Daniel Fiverson with me, evolutionary astrologer, Santa Fe, and we'll be right back to talk about evolutionary astrology. What is it? And the great spiritual perspective it'll share, because 2022 is coming up. Okay. Thank you. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, the furthest visible planet by the eye. By leaving a cycle based on meaningfulness and truth, Capricorn's energy establishes social boundaries in a structure incorporating rules, authority, and ethics. As a cardinal earth sign depicted by a sea goat climbing from the sea up to the top of a mountain, Capricorn overcomes fears through goals and ambitions to achieve mastery.
Talk Cosmos brings you leading-edge astrological conversations with hour-long programs each week on KKNW. The show goes live every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on Facebook and YouTube, along with daily chats throughout the week on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you click like and subscribe buttons so you can get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or, if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. So, grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
Hello, my name is John Talevich. I'm a chiropractic doctor, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we understand how to implement our free will through the cosmos.
Bringing good vibes to the Puget Sound and the world. Alternative Talk 1150.
Well, hi again. Here we are, December 26th. And thank you for tuning in and subscribing. We're a YouTube and podcast in Daniel Fiverson, Santa Fe. So we just left at the punchline, and I'm ready now to hear the purpose that you were going to expound.
I guess there are really two meanings here, because I think it's important to understand the progression, the line of progression, and to understand the challenges that we each have. Are we establishing our individuality? Are we establishing our creativity? Are we moving away from consensus? Are we, finding ourselves, as individuals? Or are we beginning to recognize that we are part of something much bigger than ourselves and wanting to merge into it? But as an astrologer, what this is really about, and why I believe that Jeff came up with this and realized it, is because it tells us how the chart is working. And this is huge. You said up front, and it's true, astrology is not a cookbook science. One size does not fit all. And the problem with astrology is that people's understanding of it is they think that it is one size fit all, that what they read in the newspaper is who they must be or should be or are not. And so it creates a lot of dichotomies and just things that don't mesh up. But when we understand, so, like for instance, one of the things that I ask all my clients is, there something you would like to know? What is it you would like to know about your chart? And that single question tells me, where they are along that evolutionary line, and I can gauge the reading to them. So that they're going to come away with some meaning, because somebody who, wants to become an artist, to become a writer, an author, and wants to separate from, from the pack, so to speak, they may not care about metaphysics or spirituality yet. They're still working on themselves to the degree of finding out who they are. So, we have to gear it towards them. But as an astrology, it also tells me that if somebody has the moon in Pisces, is this person, spiritually inclined, or are they an alcoholic? The chart doesn't tell you this, just like the chart doesn't tell you their gender or their skin color or any of that. So it's a way of understanding whose chart that is, and what it's all about, and how those archetypes are going to work. Every archetype has light and shadow. Okay. And again, it doesn't mean that just because somebody is spiritualizing that everything's going to be all light. It could actually have a large degree of shadow, because the further we move along the line, the more of that we're able to work with and understand and delve into. It's very mercurial. Mercury was the only god who could go down into the underworld and return unharmed. Well, that's what we have to do too, and we can do it, but we don't know that we can do it. We're afraid to go down into those dark spaces within ourselves and examine what's there. Even if we go to see, for therapy, or maybe we do go for therapy. Maybe the therapist helps us navigate that space. But in essence, we can also do it on our own by seeing ourselves in an objective mirror, which is a very Aquarian perspective. So this is the reason that this all works, and it's why it makes EA so powerful, because you can literally light up the chart in terms of the intentions and what's inherent in each of those archetypes and how they're all working together.
Well, you know what really comes to mind because of the process of living is that this being frightened, as you were mentioning about going down, it really reminds me just how basic as a blueprint this whole process of consensus individuation spirituality has in about every single phase of the whole process of living. Because I too love evolutionary astrology since I learned about it because of soul growth. It's really suddenly the purpose and intention of why one would matter, the psychological depth. But I was just thinking, if a person, as an example, giving to audience that if a person is on any, wanting a depth or wanting to wonder, should they really write this story maybe about something that seems kind of scary? You know, it has that security, because security is safety, right? And if they're scared, then it is a matter of recognizing what the conditioning is, and if they're strong enough to move away into perhaps liberating those truths as they see it through their prism of light, and then align to what kind of spiritual intensity. I mean, that might be an abstraction, but I hope it kind of constitutes how this whole thread isn't, which I know you understand, isn't just isolated. Okay, I'm in this category now, and now I'm in that category. But in a sense, as you say, bleeds into the entire process of living. You know, but I know you're going to go on, and I'm eager to, at some point, please bring in the nodes, because to me, that's how Pluto really helps us navigate.
All right, let me just say something to that, and then we'll jump to the nodes. Here's the good news. We have a soul. We have a higher self. Okay. So in the bardo, the higher self has determined the relationships, the circumstances, the people who are going to come into our lives on schedule. That's what astrology actually shows us, is the schedule. And so it's not that it's predestination or it's fate, because as those people and those circumstances show up, we still have free will as to how we either react or respond to them. It's human nature to stay the same. Okay. But evolution is not a theory. It's not a fact. It's a theory. I got that backwards. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a theory. It's a fact. Evolution is real, and yes. the reason we can go along that continuum is because there is an evolutionary pressure from our higher self, from outside of ourselves, that is guiding us, that is pushing us forward. So we'll encounter circumstances and opportunities, and either we'll resist them because we're afraid of them, or they're too difficult, or we'll say, okay, yeah, this popped up. There's a reason for it. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna do this. And amazingly, another whole cycle of our life will begin to unfold as a result of that decision. We have to take opportunities. We have to be brave. We have to have some courage and be willing to step outside of ourselves, to be open to those changes. This is a good lead into the nodes, because the lunar nodes is that evolutionary trajectory, is that karmic trajectory. The South Node is a composite of our egos, of our moons from the past. It's our default way of being and feeling, and it's where we go by default. Western astrology sometimes likes to teach that we have to get out of our South Node somehow. We can't. That's who we've been for lifetimes. It's who we were, and part of it is still who we are. We go there unconsciously, automatically. That's why we'll meet somebody. And we'll have this, just reaction to them. We don't know why, because they'll remind us of somebody from the past. The South Node is our past. It's our PTSD, but it's also what we've accomplished. We come in with two suitcases, and I'm old enough to remember when suitcases didn't have wheels on them.
Yeah, exactly.
So we get to the airport, and we're carrying two suitcases. One of them is so light we don't even know we have it. Those are our gifts and the things that we've accomplished in the past. The other suitcase we're dragging along the ground. We wish it had wheels. Those are our lessons, our challenges, and that's how we come in. We come into the present. most often what happens lifetime after lifetime is that the past gets repeated as the present. Okay, we default to that core habitual emotional nature, and we kind of stay there. And it may take us many lifetimes to literally to get out of it. But we have crises. We have Virgo growth through crisis events, and Pluto events, and Uranus events. Uranus particularly. Uranus is the great disruptor. It's my new name for him. Uranus follows Capricorn. Aquarius follows Capricorn. Capricorn is earth, it's structure. We become crystallized. It's our aging. I mean, people, as we age, we get totally stuck in who we are. Uranus comes along and just shatters that. I had a friend a number of years ago. It was he had a stroke. He was a young man. He had a stroke. And he said to me, he described it to me, he said, I felt like I was a mirror, and my mirror got shattered and all the pieces were laying on the ground, but I only picked up the pieces that I wanted to keep. That's what Uranus does. It shatters us. It disrupts and interrupts our lives so that something else can happen. So these events are going to keep us moving forward. We can reduce the number of disruptive, chaotic events by recognizing when we need to change, when we need to recognize something that needs to become more conscious, some part of ourselves we need to see. The North Node is a probable future, okay? If you go out and you shoot somebody today, you're going to be in jail tomorrow, okay? If you don't, other possibilities are there for us. It's not wide open because, again, it's the North Node actually correlates to the North Node of Pluto in our charts. We all have the same planetary node, the outer planetary nodes, because they move over thousands of years. And the planetary North Node of Pluto is in Capricorn. So wherever, and most people don't even know they have these planetary nodes, but they don't have to, because it actually translates directly into their North Node. The soul takes that Pluto planetary North Node, and that's what becomes the formatting of our lunar North Node. It's a point that's potentialized and fertilized, but we have to proactively go out to meet it. It's there for us, but we have to recognize the opportunities when they show up, the person who shows up, the circumstances, the job, whatever it is. We have to recognize it and seize it, carpe diem, because that's how we move along that trajectory. It doesn't really happen by itself. We'll creep along it, but the big changes come when we consciously engage with it. We have to engage.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just thinking in a way, though, because the way I've always thought, because we're talking about, and thank you for bringing up the fact that all planets have nodes, because it has to do about their intersection. It's a point, and it has an idea about the intersection between their path and the sun. But with the moon that travels so quickly, it's an 18-month period. And so right now, as we know, we're leaving on a global basis Gemini, coming up as the 18th of January, and we're going into the North Node of Taurus for its 18 months. But the time I was born, the North Node was in Aries. It was 24 degrees Aries, thank you, not 26, 24. And how I see it also, if this correlates, just to kind of ground a little bit for my own thinking, is that the Pluto gets hungry. It wants our soul to transform. It doesn't, its whole motivation is for life. And the energy of one experience has its finality. And if we don't recognize it, which, like you say, even if Uranus doesn't come along and shatter our mirror or prompt us with something, if we're aware enough, because sometimes it doesn't. And as we know, perhaps it doesn't. But it's like, I think it's like an addiction. We're forced to go, if we want life, to go to that North Node in order to readdress a new context.
That's what's
of what
happening
we
to us.
want.
That's what's happening to us globally. That's what this polarized political environment is all about. It's what COVID is all about. These are homeopathic remedies that literally are healing us and moving us forward. It's a bitter pill. It's no question.
Yeah.
But so a couple of years down the road, and I don't want to get into trouble and say how many years I think it might be, but a couple of years down the road, we're going to look back and say, "Wow, look how far we've come," and we will not get there without what we're going through now. It's a tough mountain that we're climbing, but we have no choice. We're dealing with some non-negotiable realities. And these non-negotiable realities, it's Uranus and Taurus and what's essential. Remember when COVID first came out, the big word was essential. What we heard about what essential businesses and everything. That is the core theme to the time that we're passing through. And that also is a Taurus dynamic. We're coming into a whole 18-month period that is now going to reinforce this 7-year transit of Uranus through Taurus. So it's going to be a very, very powerful combination. But we're going to learn to be self-reliant. We're going to learn to take care of our health. We're going to learn to take care of ourselves and nurture ourselves. And we're going to learn. Pluto is going to be the ruler of the South Node. We're going to learn to empower ourselves, to have self-confidence and self-reliance, emotional self-reliance in who we are, and not depend on, well, I can eat whatever I want and I'll go to the doctor and he'll fix me. Or, we live in a fix me world where we think we can basically do whatever we want to do and somebody's going to fix us. My mommy fixed me, my daddy fixed me, now society's going to fix me. That's all got to come to an end. We have to learn to take care of ourselves, to be responsible. Saturn, we have to be responsible for ourselves. And that's what all of these events that we're moving through are teaching us. And it's difficult. Clearly it's difficult. We're dealing with a lot of people who are radicalized. That's what the Gemini Sagittarius notes have done is radicalized beliefs that people have polarized and gravitated. And we have Neptune opposite US Neptune and Neptune and Pisces. These are all impacting our belief systems and polarizing them and radicalizing them. Well, Jupiter conjunct Neptune is definitely over in the long run going to raise our consciousness. They're both about consciousness, but
and it will.
But yes, it will.
Yeah.
But it's going to do it by radicalizing those beliefs and outing them and bringing into conflict and confrontation with each other so that they can be seen.
Exactly. Yeah, they have to be seen, and just to remind the folks that in Sagittarius, it's all about opinions. And so, of course, when you say radicalized, because Gemini is more of gathering the information just on that level, but we form our opinions, but the opinions can get more intense, and people want to, But isn't it going to be great when you say that? With Jupiter and Neptune, which is going to be in March and April connecting, because Pisces dissolves, it is that force that's larger, and it's going to, but until we can see it, maybe that is like a cartoon factory, right? Then we can really recognize, oh my gosh, there's no line about this. That's actually what it is. And maybe it has to change. And the other date, just to throw in with your sage commentaries here, is it's July 31st, I think, that Uranus in Taurus is going to conjunct the nodes, and I forget just at what degree. It's maybe 18 or 20 in the 20s. Right.
Yeah, the nodes are going to be very big players this year. High G is going to be a very big player. I'm working on my forecast, my annual forecast, which I should have up on Amazon in the next 2 weeks. But High G is everywhere. She's everywhere, and wow. some challenging aspects to High G. High G is proactive healthcare. She's the root word of hygiene. She was mythologically the daughter of Asclepius, who's the father of modern medicine. And Neptune is pandemics. So, we and Jupiter, he may be the greater benefic, according to the Hellenists, but he may make things bigger. He doesn't always make things better. So, these are some really rough combinations that we're going to navigate over the next 12 months. And the High G is really going to totally upend our healthcare system. Which, if you get sick today, it's worse than being sick itself. To have to go into that system to have to deal with it. Our healthcare system is totally, excuse the expression, effed up. Between the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies, it's a cabal. No question that it's a huge cabal.
There's a lot to navigate in it. I can testify for that. And I don't know what it is for people with private sector. Of course, I'm at the age where it's Medicare, involved, but it is and thankfully I don't need much.
I'm there too, but even that is
oh, it's a lot. No, it's a lot to navigate.
It's a lot to navigate. And it, we're the only country in the Western world that doesn't have, publicly funded healthcare. I mean, these are necessities that have to come to pass. Public education, these are things that have to happen. There's no longer any negotiation here, but we're meeting a lot of resistance, and that's what we have to deal with, is this resistance. That resistance is what causes the cataclysm, Sue. It's the resistance that's built up to the forward movement that just eventually causes that movement to just
and doesn't this
forward.
Yes. And this, then I've been thinking a lot on these terms too. And I've been thinking it's the attachment to to what was. And again, that goes back to security and safety and fear of the unknown, the conditioning, the whole 9 yards. So what's the direction? Well, if you think of Uranus too, because Uranus, just for our classmates out there that are listening, our audience, is that it revolves backwards, or it rotates backwards. And it's, in other words, it's already breaking the system. And right. So it's, let's see, what was I thinking about that? I got lost thinking about it going backwards.
Not only that, it has rings and it spins on its side.
Yes, that's it. Yes, exactly.
Right.
And so therefore, when it breaks up this, also I'm thinking of Aquarius that has the syntop. So you have to leap. It's like an act of faith. It's almost like these outer planets are urging us between Uranus and Neptune. Just leap, take that leap of faith, get to the next spot. Because when you're in the consensus with Saturn, which has all its little rings going perfect, and it's almost a perfect orbit around the sun, there's no deviation. Everybody has its role, everybody knows. But then where, like Jupiter in the mythology, is our part in it? When do we make our choices, as you say, to go through that growth process, to say, this is my desire. No, I think I understand that that's not really going to feed my soul need any longer, and align myself back to the ocean from the wave, as you say.
Right. Now, the thing about consciousness and the evolution of consciousness is that it creates a choke chain reality. It creates an awareness that you can't go back. It closes off all of the options for retreat. It becomes a singularity that there really only becomes one choice that we can make, and it's only a matter of time until we choose it.
And it's like spiraling back. It's that idea. It's not really a bad thing. It's just how the whole world moves. We're going north. The whole planet's going northward. And so that circle is going like that spiral.
Right.
Yeah, I like the fact that we're reminded that but that attachment, we will be seeing more of things, but I guess till we see things. Yes, we have a few minutes here, I think.
We have to really nurture ourselves, Sue. We have to stay out of harm's way. When we see violence, when we see something threatened, we just have to back off. We can't be confrontational. We have to recognize
It reminds, yes, it reminds.
Are we being chimed down here?
Yeah, well, we are. We've got about 2 seconds. It is patience, isn't it? And it's also a matter of the we instead of just the me. How does the we work out? Daniel Fiverson, Santa Fe, Evolutionary Astrologer, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience. Do come back again. This is December 26th, and you can find Daniel at 4, that's the number 4, Evolutionary Astrology, and go to Talk Cosmos on the website and subscribe. We love you. Happy New Year. It is coming up.
Thank you.
Yes, very much blessings. Mwah.
Namaste.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests connect soul growth patterns with the energetic cycles of astrology. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.